Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Madaxeman.com podcast 2018 Burton Doubles Samurai Special. In this, our second game, the Samurai take on a historical, but clearly not a geographical contemporary, in the shape of the Anglo-Irish, in this temporally themed competition. In this report you'll find out how katanas do against Viking-style heavy axes, and if the Samurai bowfire can halt a knightly charge before it runs them down. The podcast also contains a review of a couple of new hipster beers, and, much more importantly, we start to make inroads into the Asda curry in a box, starting of course with the Onion Bhajis. So whatever format of device you're streaming, listening or even watching this through, sit back as we crack open some tinnies, chew the batter, chew the onions, and invite you to join us to enjoy the battle and the banter. Okay, now, here we are for episode 2, and I think the most important thing is to talk about the Bhajis that we've just had in our usual combination of supermarket, curry in a box, and discussing wargaming at Burton on Trent. And this time we've had Asda's, let me think what it was, just grab the box here, Asda's meal for 2, chicken korma, chicken tikka masala, and so far we've had 4 Bhajis.
And they had flavour. I mean, one thing I think we should point out in the review of this meal is you've got 4 Bhajis, chicken korma, chicken tikka masala, peanut rice and naan bread for a surprisingly, suspiciously cheap £5.
That, because we looked at the receipt on the way out, because that was just bizarrely impossible. You couldn't get 4 Bhajis anywhere, even in Burton on Trent, for a £5. And we got the whole curry for a £5. So
I suppose what we're going to discover is bargain value, or you get what you pay for.
And those Bhajis are, they're not top quality Bhajis by any standard. I thought there was a lot more dough than there was onion.
Indeed.
But they still had a little bit of spice to them.
I can still taste it on my tongue now.
Yeah.
There was definite flavour.
And I suppose if you're saying £5, you've got 2 main courses, the rest of it, those are Bhajis that we've really probably paid 12, 13 pence each for. Mm-hmm. Mathematically speaking, throughout it. So would I pay 12 pence each for those Bhajis? Yes. Yeah, without question. And we're also on to Hogstar, which is something from the Hog's Back Brewery. It's an English craft lager, which I'm already suspicious of, but it's actually quite nice.
It is. The words craft and lager it's
just not really right.
Yeah, but it's a cheeky little number that's quite quaffable.
Yeah, with English Cascada hops. I think this is one of the more mainstream ones. This is available from mainstream outlets, I believe.
To be frank though, once you start telling me what the hops are, I've stopped caring.
Yeah, you may be right. Right. So on with the important stuff. Game 2, which we're cracking on with at the Burton Doubles. So we won a game.
Come on,
get in, and I'm trying to think what we did. I think this might have been a sandwich for lunch. Actually, was it a little bit of a? We didn't get out.
Oh no, I didn't. I went out because you were doing things, so I went out.
That's true. I was basing the troops. That's what I was doing. That's when I put the Magna base on, I think.
I went out and I had 2 pints with Jason and
Other people. At Burton Bridge or
what's the one by the hotel?
Burton Bridge.
Yeah, there you go.
Good proper pub. Well done. So game 2, and we're fighting the Anglo-Irish, and look at that. That's an enormous amount of troops.
There were a worryingly large amount.
And these guys were all heavy foot. The enemy was just a line of heavy foot that must have been stretched more than halfway across the battlefield.
It looked quite intimidating, didn't it?
It really did.
So, before we get on to the details of this happening as part of the table, what was our plan here? Because we do have plans. We always sit down and go, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I suppose we do. Well, I guess, thinking about it, we tried reverse engineer. It's an army. You're fighting an army that's going to have a very solid middle of close formation heavy foot axemen.
So let's not
fight them, because that's a really, really bad thing. So with the terrain, it was fairly obvious because of this plantation, which is kind of very tricky for close formation foot, that all their heavy foot were going to be here. And then it's just going to peter out a bit on either side, because these guys are not cheap. Mm-hmm. So you only get a finite number of them. So I think certainly from my side on this bit, I got the cavalry this time. Not entirely sure what our thinking was. Maybe
Can
just
we
to
can
change
we
it
go
up.
through the thinking of let's put the cavalry on the closed flank?
Well, it's not necessarily close. Actually, this is a waterway, so this is the edge of the table. But
That's
as
fairly
an
close.
open piece of space, this is a bigger open space than this.
Okay.
So actually, whilst it looks impressive, this is the open flank.
So we actually thought about it.
Possibly we did.
Well played, sir.
So the cavalry are here. We're trying to not really fight here. The usual 4 heavy foot in the centre, the other big command, and then that must have given you that kind of weird mixed bow command. And where are the warrior monks? I've lost them somewhere. Was that the warrior monks? Or
is this warrior monks?
Maybe that's the warrior monks in the middle.
Yeah,
because there's the peasants. So they're in a block of 4. The warrior monks just to take on somebody who's pretty similar to them, that are a bit better. And yeah, they massed a lot of heavy swordsmen in the middle. They had their knights on the open flank, which we just discussed, and then some more cavalry and a few bowmen here.
And over there, in fact, it's very similar to the last game. It's got a very, very solid scary, but all of a sudden it gets quite empty over here. So the plan
this
was
gets quite thin, doesn't it?
Push to the left.
Yep.
And see if we can collapse the flanks.
And this was a big block of bowmen who are a target to anything that's Japanese and samurai flavoured. So over onto your flank, you've done a very impressive job of extending and shuffling across and filling that table with quite nasty stuff.
Yeah, well, the bow and the bow and the cav, that's quite good. To do this, however, to get them over there, this bit here in the plantation, this is the mediocre Ashigari, so we're actually using the poor troops to extend the line, but it's a risk worth taking because these troops here were medium footy, not elite, so they could sort of like tough it out.
Are you saying we've actually already learned after one game that these medium foot poor people are not just there to stand at the back because the army's not big enough to fill the table without?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yes. So here's the wall again. Doesn't it look good? Lovely, beautiful. I was so happy with it.
Tell me how that tree's fixed to the base.
That, of course, is a rare earth magnet. Why would it not be? So this is using the evading rules and the interpenetration rules in Arts of Guerre. Light horse can go through cavalry. Means you don't have to leave silly gaps. As long as they're lined up, they can just interpenetrate. They're hoping that's true. I was pretty sure it was true. I'd not gone for 2 pints, so I was a lot more confident than you would be.
So your plan here was to take knights on front of you with cav?
Well, 1, 2, 3 knights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cavalry. Some of our usual bowmen people, or these might have been the swordsmen. And if I can get into these, those are bowmen. They are not going to stand up against these guys. Our samurai will just cut straight through them. So whilst there's 3 knights, as long as these guys don't lose quickly, and given there's 5 of them, you'd hope there's some sort of overlap there. These guys should plough through here, and it creates a flank and puts this fairly small formation in.
So you're looking to push forward on this flank as well?
I think there's an opportunity once these get committed, and particularly once they get broken up. If they stay there, tough. If they drift across, tough. But if they get drawn into a skirmish, a chase thing, that could be tricky for them.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Yep, the interpenetration rules do work. The knights come forward. Suddenly we're now starting to shoot, which is what you want to do. If I can get 1 hit on any of those knights, suddenly they're the same as my cavalry. That's the big difference. And their attention is now fixed on here, which means these guys have got hopefully a good run at these chaps as well without too much trouble. And actually, in a way, if one of those knights is forced over here, suddenly I'm at 5 against 2, which that's doable. That's very doable.
Couple of overlaps.
Your side. So you're still filling that table.
We filled the table and we're going forward now. Over at the end, he's got quite a lot of cav, and although they're not great cav, he's actually outnumbering me on the end of the line now, and I've got light horse on the end, so that was a bit of a worry. But overall, he's got the cav, some bow there, and then lots of gaps. So
huge,
this is where we're going. Come on, boys, this is where we're going to go.
Concentrated shooting, and actually using the Ashigaru to face off those. Suddenly, this is these poor guys. They're defending an enormously wide gap here. So this is the cavalry thing. Did Did you get caught? Did you choose to get caught just to slow him down? What happened there?
Um,
Because there's a fight between a light horse and double overlap with cavalry, and
I think what that was I could choose to evade, but then I might get caught, so I might as well die fighting because I think it was quite close. So I thought I'll just kind of die fighting, which means at this end of the line we've got concentrated bow fire.
true, yeah, lots of shooting on him, and then the same old thing as pick on the bowman if you can fix those to the front.
But to be honest, this was a bit of a worry because this is where our line runs out.
This is it. Yeah.
So I was not overly happy at this point.
Okay, you didn't tell me.
Well, of course.
Minor detail, yeah. Okay. Irish baggage, bit of Guinness, all good stuff. So what's happening here then? So these knights are still pushing forward, but because these are confident, this is now the heavy foot. I think these two medium foot have wheeled across and are starting to join in the shooting. All this thing of trying to do one hit on the knights, and then the heavy foot are just ploughing forward.
Can I just ask, because you've got lots of arrows and lots of different groups and people behind groups and staggered.
This one, yeah.
I've seen you do this before. Were you getting a bad feeling here of firework display going on?
There, I think sometimes, but it just still comes down to 1, 2, 3. They can do nothing. These guys plough forwards, hit them, the game is over. And I'm thinking, this is a little bit scary, but this is one where, I think as you said in the previous game, it's about making omelettes, it's about breaking eggs. And I'm thinking, this is the sort of situation I like when you think, actually, these guys are not actually as good as these frontline combat. So these guys, the knights, probably do feel confident. They're going to have a go at my cavalry. But if they do, I've got so many extra troops that as long as I don't get blown away in the first turn, I'll have their flanks. Okay. And there's there's almost no science to it. There's 2 commands, but it's just three cavalry facing them off, an extra one here, an extra bowman, an extra guy here. I've got 6 moving units against 3 moving units.
I was paying absolutely no attention to your end of the table, so I'm genuinely intrigued to find out how this works out.
No, well, it was interesting. So here we are in the cherry tree orchard with the rubbishy Ashigaru against the rubbishy enemy troops, and I think it looks like your proper samurai are into their flank.
Again,
it's this poor guy again, isn't it? He's got far too much to do.
It was that gaps at the end of his solid line. It's all gaps, so this is where we're going into fill the end of the line open, really.
And these are the warrior monks. Did you bring a warrior monk in, or was that must have been yours actually? That command must have been yours, because the other ones were mine. Yeah. So an extra warrior monk really helps. So suddenly, have you moved up here?
We moved up and done the angle thing to make it harder for him to go around. Now our light horse has died, but the shooting's been quite successful. We've got a couple. Now I'm still quite worried here because we've got nothing here.
There's nothing at all.
We've got nothing here. So against his bow is quite good.
Oh, his bow, that's already taken 2 hits. That's a tricky one. Okay, after that brief commercial break, we're back here to looking at what's going on here. So that's a 2 hit, that's a 1 hit. Your light horse has gone. That's another 1 hit in there. You've got 2 ordinary cavalry there, and you've got your elite bowman.
Yeah, his bows are looking very vulnerable. And where we had the good shooting there, I thought rather than wait for him to come around the flank, I'll try and chase him off. So I actually charged him with just 1 cavalry.
Okay.
Does
that have to be in a subsequent picture, I guess?
Yeah. And if we can go on to the subsequent picture.
Just you can jump down 1. Oh, there we go.
And he chose to evade.
Okay.
And he went backwards, and so he evaded with 3 cavalry against a charge of 1 of mine, which immediately released all that pressure on the flank.
But I suppose if you stick there, he's at -1 because he's got a hit, but he's got 2 overlaps, so he's only at +1. But then that one is fixed, and you're in the flank. You're already in a flanking position there. So there's suddenly that turns, that hits him, It's a tricky one, isn't it? You know, it's if you're not going to charge and if you're going to be hit in that position, I suppose it sounds a bit weird, you know, 4 evading from 1, but if you're getting these 2 bogged down, these roll it up and suddenly it all looks a bit of a mess.
But that on the flank, that's where he was strong. I mean, that was his good bit on that flank.
Push these 2 past here.
So I was quite pleased when he took the route of immediate safety.
So here, this knighty command suddenly gets a load of pips, and one of the knights, which actually I was sort of hoping would happen, got peeled off and dropped into this gap in the bowman where these guys ran away. These are backed off. My heavy foot are going in, so suddenly he's got a knight in. He's got an overlap on it. You know, it's looking good, and I'm sat here thinking, this takes 4 hits. It's elite. I've got a general. I've definitely got an overlap there. You can do nothing about that. I can stick this knight for a long, long time to the front of these elite samurai, and that will make those 2 on their own against the 3, 4 cavalry, 5 cavalry over here. It also exposes these 2 bowmen because 2 knights cannot cover all these bowmen, and this any of these troops over here, the samurai archers, samurai swordsmen, even the cavalry can have a good old go at those bowmen in the open. So getting one of the knights bogged down into a combat against heavy infantry that's going to take forever.
Especially as he got reserves behind.
Exactly. Any gap I can plug it, he's probably going to take some damage. So happy days really. So this is your wing again after those guys have moved, but then this is starting to be the centre as well, isn't it? Actually. So he's got an overlap. You've got an overlap. Not so good. He's taken a hit as well, or is that a green shield? I don't know.
But he hasn't taken a hit. But they're the elite samurai choppy people against his average pedestrians. So it's all this is starting to sort of like sweep.
And those 2 bowmen on the right flank are so exposed now. There's an overlap that's taken 2 hits. They're going to get hit by elite swordsmen. Suddenly there's going to be a gap that must be 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 7 units wide. That's going to appear there. Okay, so this suddenly looks like it might not work. The knights are doing some pretty decent damage on those heavy infantry on the other flank. So you know, a lot of reserves, but these are still medium foot in reserve, which knights can chew through. And these knights that have been peeled off from that block haven't taken any hits yet, and I'm right at the brink of collapsing with those heavy infantry. So all of a sudden, my genius plan looks like it might not work, which has happened before.
I find that shocking.
Yeah, I find that shocking as well. But so with that plan starting to struggle, suddenly it's a question of I can't wait for that to happen. Something has to change. So this was one of those turns where you get decent dice, you just throw everything in. Now the cavalry are not thrown in. They're not against the knights. They've moved up to overlap the cavalry hitting the bowmen. The other samurai swordsmen have hit bowmen, and these guys are still, the heavy infantry is still fighting on. I've covered them with the cavalry as reserves as well. So 2 of his 3 knights are still not committed, and I've got cavalry into bowmen in the open. I've got swordsmen into bowmen in the open. We've taken an overlap off the knights, so suddenly we're elites against the knights as well. And that's taking the chance that's presented. Back to you on the other flank, which there's all of a sudden this is just piecemeal, isn't it?
They've gone. His cavalry's out of the game. They've gone, and we're just chopping up isolated groups of the enemy.
That's a unit on its own. The overlap. That's a unit on its own.
Ready to swing round into the flank of
actually, yeah, that piece that's pushed forward there is already starting to develop that flank a lot. You're mopping up. You're mopping up here very much, and it's quite early in the game for that as well. So here we go. This unit that had taken 3 hits, the heavy foot samurai, turns it around. You know, but that's what 2-handed cutting weapon men can do.
Mm-hmm.
If they win, they get the extra +1. You know, that neutralises.
Or don't care about
armor. They've got an overlap. They are elite. There's no overlap on the other side. So suddenly 2 hits on the knights, and the knights are on the brink as well. So. And then even if they break through, they're nearly dead. We're still not committed here. We're starting to knock big holes in the bowman. It's maybe not gone as well as it should, but 2 hits there, 2 hits there. Suddenly this bowman could be completely exposed. Then he's gone. So, and here's the big helicopter view. Look at all this solid line of heavy foot swordsmen in the middle. Not a single one. We've managed to avoid fighting any of their best troops, and we're already, you've almost won on your wing, and mine is nip and tuck, but it's ready.
I hate to say it, but that looks like a decent, well executed plan.
Well, once in every 20 or 30 games, I think statistically that just has to happen. But again, it's still a lot of troops, isn't it?
It's not fighting.
As this chap here is saying, there are so many troops when you've got a big 300-point army here. It's absolutely plenty. So this all of a sudden, your wing's won. So suddenly some more detail on the right wing. So the cavalry, the knights go into the cavalry. It's a bit of a mix on that end, so that's great. That keeps that combat going. But vitally, where the cavalry have been into the bowmen for 2 or 3 turns, suddenly there's a massive hole, and everything else on the enemy line is engaged. Some of them are starting to take hits, and the enemy have got no reserves at all.
And he's covering gaps with skirmishers.
He's covering gaps with skirmishers, with bowmen, whereas I've got 3, 4 cavalry all ready to cover back gaps as well. And heavy infantry into heavy infantry, that's going to be a bit of a mix. But this gap, this one gap that he just can't fill, because the second string troops in the Irish army are much poorer than mine, suddenly looks like a great opportunity to do well.
All looking good.
All looking good. Yep, more mopping up. Ashigaru in action.
This is just a story of pushing past.
Push. But you push past the flank literally, because that's the flank of his army, isn't it? In fact, this was, when we started, was in the middle.
Yeah.
That what was it? Plantation was the centre of the board, and it's now become the right wing of his army. Everything else past that has just gone. Looks like you threw the monks in here against some heavy foot, which the monks take 3 hits, the heavy foot take 4. But is this kind of a let's finish this quickly and just trade some casualties?
Possibly, but to be fair, it's like he is pushing his heavy foot forwards as well.
We've got to fight them sometime.
Getting to the point of got to fight, and also the positive thing is just off table to the left. That's where his flanks collapse. So as long as we don't go quickly, all of a sudden we're rolling up the line.
And it looks like, looking at those hit markers, you probably have the rub at the green here anyway.
Yeah.
But even so, all we need to do is do 1 or 2 hits to push that army closer to the break point on it. So over here on the right wing again, suddenly that knight that was fighting the heavy infantry has died. The cavalry have broken through. They've chased some light infantry away. Suddenly you've got the 2 knights still there. I've broken off with my cavalry, and those 2 knights, they've taken a couple of hits or so, and that theory of surrounding them has actually come true, because everything else that was supporting them has been evaporated or run over by heavy infantry or cavalry. Back in the middle, we're starting to trade off this just. I think this was us saying, let's just pile in and close the game out. Even if we get a 50-50 trade, we're so far ahead now that we can just close this out. Even if we get 60-40, we'll close it out. What we said a couple of pictures ago about the right flank of the Irish army effectively being where their centre had been. This is your samurai. They're fast. They move 3 a go. They can operate in a block. They're really starting to literally roll that flank up in a very, very graphic, very visual way.
Here we go.
Once there's a hole, it really starts to work. And then back to the knights. Those knights who were surrounded, I'm now hitting them from every side. The cavalry that broke through have come back. That's just bad news for them. Bad news all round. Bad news for the centre.
Just telling the story of the...
But to actually look at that one's right in the back of their bowmen. It's just, there's no reserves there, no reserves of any quality to hold it up. The knights are starting to fall apart. We're now, if we look at this picture, which is our right flank, there's only 1 or 2, there's only 1 combat unit of the enemy visual in that picture. Everything else has just been surrounded and cut down. We're trading off in the middle.
Fine.
I think, again, arguably we were getting the rub of the green, but we could have, as you say, lost 70-30 there, and the game still gets closed out. You closed out In fact, this bowman here on their right wing.
That was his cav.
Oh, that was his cav.
Originally evaded.
Okay.
That they were a long way out. They did start coming back just in time to face my troops after all his other chaps had died. So we were just
again
going for targets.
World of mopping up. The centre, you've now completely taken the plantation as well. So you're now into the open ground.
Yeah.
There's nothing on literally half the table. Lovely shot, the Ashigari. That's really nice Ashigari. These are great flags here. But then game's over, and luckily I actually managed to get back to the hotel room to pick up, some of the first half and most of the second half of Fulham beating Wolves 2-0 in the Championship, which was another great display for Fulham, and certainly a video well worth watching if you're of that West London ilk. So 2 games, two wins, early start, and all set up for a curry that evening, and we're all set up for a curry now. So when we rejoin you, we'll be talking curry.